Thank you. We will have a recording available as well as some notes after the convening is over. So to kick us off this morning, I'd like to introduce Fauna Hurley from Senator Welch's office. Senators Welch and Sanders and Representative Ballant, were real presences in the kingdom in the immediate aftermath of the flood and have been working on a number of fronts on our behalf. And so Fauna is going to talk a little bit about Senator Welch's efforts and what the congressional delegation has been up to. So Fauna.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Jen, for having me. And it's so good to see many of you. I saw some of you a few weeks ago for the very muddy groundbreaking at the Yellow Barn. And really, we are so proud of that project and that effort. So thanks to all those who made that happen. For flood response, thank you so much for gathering this group and all you are doing to help share information. Senator Welch and our office is tracking and pushing additional funding in a supplemental package. As you all may know, August is recess, so we won't be able to know anything about a supplemental package until September, when they get back in session next week. And there is a non-zero chance there may be a government shutdown come September 30th, which implicates a lot of things in the Senate and would be a very challenging time for a potential shutdown. However, Senator Welch and Senator Sanders and Representative Ballant have been in close contact with many other representatives from states including Hawaii and California, who have also been experiencing lots of climate change related disasters. So we are very hopeful that we can avoid a shutdown and increase FEMA's disaster recovery fund. You may know the delegation sent a letter earlier this month to President Biden asking for additional support from many federal agencies. And President Biden, his most recent proposal has been to replenish the fund with $12 billion. And we understand that farms and businesses and communities need more help. We are on a lot of these kinds of calls, meeting with a lot of businesses and farms, and we know for sure that we need more support in all of our communities across the state. You know, our farms have been flooded kind of nonstop this summer. The rain has been, you know, impressive to say the least. So we are looking at what we can do in the Farm Bill for some changes to funding for our farms. And let's see, the president's disaster declaration opened up emergency programs at the FSA and the NRCS for farms in every county. The state has applied to USDA Agriculture Disaster Declaration, and if that is approved, it would just extend the length of time for that emergency. I just got an update on the SBA loan program that is, as many of you hopefully know, eligible for both homeowners and businesses. And so far, SBA loans for homeowners have been approved. $11.2 million have been approved. For businesses, almost $3 million have been approved. And I do want to stress that the SBA physical loan deadline is the 12th, is September 12th. If you can please let people know. We are really being encouraged to ask folks to apply, even if they decide not to accept the loan. They have 60 days to make that decision once the loan has been made. So it's kind of a good tool in the toolbox for businesses and homeowners who are just trying to piece together myriad sources of funding. I also see Carrie Ann and many folks here from the Vermont SBDC, and I have been referring myriad businesses to the SBDC. They are a free resource. They can help businesses navigate the GoFundMes, the state grant, the loans, and help businesses develop a clearer path forward. I also see, of course, Dave Snedeker from NVDA, and he's a great resource, and his team, I know will be speaking later too. A couple of just good news announcements. Many of you may have seen the Northern Border Regional Commission grants were announced recently, and 4 out of 10 of those are in the NEK. I see John Ramsey on the call, Center for an Ag Economy, the town of Brighton for wastewater treatment facility, Greensboro for a town-owned wastewater collection system as well, and Sterling College. And additionally, the USDA's RD grants were announced recently. I'm happy to include links to all of these in the chat afterwards, so you can see some of those grants that are coming to your area. Overall, I just want to kind of underscore that Senator Welch and our entire congressional delegation is working hard with colleagues to push for more flood aid to replenish the fund for FEMA. And again, we won't have much more information until the Senate gets underway post Labor Day, but I will add my contact information in the chat and some of these links to these resources. Thank you so much, Jen.
Thank you so much, Fauna. I'm wondering if anyone has any comments or questions that they'd like to add.
Hi, it's Peter Corey. I'll ask one question, and most appreciative for the assistance that our federal partners have been providing to not only residents but businesses. But with respect to businesses, it seems like a lot of the aid outside of this, from the federal level anyway, is in the form of loans. And what we are seeing is that, these businesses are at a point where additional debt is really not what they need. They need, some grant funds. Do you see any of this additional aid flowing out in the form of grants, or will it all be, additional SBA idle loans and that sort of thing? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Peter. We've certainly been hearing that feedback. And, as many of you on this call know, the PPP program worked really well for businesses during COVID. And, we wish that we could produce a program that would be equivalent to that for businesses that experience damage. At this point, there aren't any existing programs for businesses in the form of grants, but it's certainly something that the delegation has been hearing and could be explored. It's just not going to be an immediate, it's not going to be a program that will be able to get off the ground immediately. So what we're looking for instead is replenishing funds for the, CDBG programs and other mitigation programs that could be disseminated into communities that could help additionally in those ways, similar to post tropical storm Irene. So thanks for the question, Peter. We're certainly aware that grants are certainly more preferred than loans.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Fauna? Morgan Nichols from Representative Ballant's office is also with us this morning. So Morgan, would you like to say a few words as well?
Hi, Jen. I can be really brief because Fauna covered everything as she does such a great job. Oh, no, my face is really big. Thanks. I just wanted to say hi. I'm Morgan Nichols. I'm a constituent services representative and a community liaison for Congresswoman Ballant. I just really appreciate Fauna's outlining of all of the work that the delegation has done up until this point, and then just add to it that if any of you or your constituents are struggling with FEMA or with SBA, as in like they've put forward an application and it's been past the amount of time and they haven't heard an answer, that's an opportunity for, or you have questions about the process, that it is an opportunity to reach out to our offices and for us to submit an inquiry. Essentially, we can't obviously put our thumb on the scales to get an outcome, but at the same time, though, we can knock on doors and turn over stones. And that is one thing that our all three of our offices are doing in really great concert with each other. So I just want to make sure that everyone is aware of that. I will also be putting my contact information in the chat and our website to submit an inquiry. And if I'm not the right person to touch base with, there's no wrong door. We can always get you through to the right person. So Jen, thank you so much for sending out the invitation. I'm really grateful to be here. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Morgan. Appreciate your being here today, and I'll just call everyone's attention to the fact that Fauna has put a number of resources into the chat, so please make sure you take a look at that. I'd like to move on now. We have with us today Representative Mike Marcotte of Coventry, who chairs the House Commerce and Economic Development Committee. I'd also like to acknowledge we have, I believe, 3 other representatives with us, Representative Terry Williams, Representative Catherine Sims, and Representative Scott Campbell, who have joined us this morning. And so we're very grateful for the legislative participation. Bobby Starr did register. I don't believe he's snuck in yet, but if he does, I will acknowledge him when he arrives as well. So thank you all for being with us today. And Representative Marcotte is going to talk a little bit about the beginnings of some state action in the legislature. So.
Good morning, Jen. Good morning, everyone. And Jen, thank you and the collaborative for putting this together. I think it's important that we have a lot of communication going on and making sure everyone knows what's out there to help them. About 4 weeks ago, my committee, along with Chair Ron Hinsdale of Senate Economic Development, held a hearing in Montpelier. It was an all-day listening session to better understand what's happening or what was happening out there. Some of the things that we heard really aren't part of our jurisdiction, but I think getting it out there when we come back in January will help in the future. You know, one of the big issues was 211. And so I think we have to have some really really big discussions on 211 and how we fund that and make sure that we're all on the same page. It didn't sound like we were at the beginning, at least, all on the same page and the difficulties that 211 had, and so I think that's one discussion that we need to have. I think, you know, it was covered, but the businesses that we heard from over and over and over again, they can't take on any more debt. It's grants that they need to get them through. You know, the administration has put out $20 million. 1 million of that has been reserved for agriculture. The other 19 million for businesses to help them. It's just a bridge. We know $20 million isn't going to go very far, but it is hopefully a bridge to help some of these struggling businesses get back up and running, either by providing dollars for them to purchase more inventory that they lost, purchase equipment that they need to get going, those sort of things. So that's beginning to go. That's been in effect for about a week now. So I think what I'm hearing right now is that some of these businesses need assistance in being able assistance in filling out the applications. A lot of these people are busy trying to get their places going. I know NVDA has been working hard with some of our local businesses and assisting them in filling the applications. I think what I've been hearing is there's a lot of applications that are coming through that aren't correct and need to be redone again. So I think all the help that anyone can provide these struggling businesses is most appreciated. And I know we need to talk about, you know, when we come back, providing probably more dollar assistance to our regional development corporations and our regional planning commissions in order to provide those navigator services that they're so good at. Another thing I'd like to really repeat is the SBDC. They are a wealth of information, and they can help our businesses in how they should go forward, and kind of planning on the future, all of those types of things. So I encourage everyone to let their businesses know that the SBDC is there. I think one of the other things that we heard was there really isn't, or there wasn't really any criteria that was being followed as far as getting into their businesses to help get things cleaned up, that type of thing. And you know, I think everyone's immediate reaction is to, I need to get in there, I need to get my business going, I need to get things cleaned up, without thinking of what's in the water, what's in the dirt, what are the, you know, what kind of issues. I know that there was, I think we need to think about making sure that there's PPP available for people, make sure they have masks and they have gloves, and those types of things. And that wasn't available from what I'm hearing. So we need to really have those discussions. We need to look back at Irene and you know, Sue Minter put together a whole packet, and we need to really look back at that again and update that. But we need to put something together that all municipalities can follow, that state government can follow, to make sure that people are doing things correctly. You know, we heard, especially from restaurants, food businesses, that they're worried that whoever is next to them isn't doing the same remediation that they are. So they may not be taking up their floors. They may not be, you know, taking enough off the walls. Mold can continue to grow, and it could, on you know, their neighbor's side, could migrate into their business. And so what will happen 6 months, a year down the road, for them after they've done everything that they need to do to make sure that their businesses are safe. So those are some of the things that we've heard. And I know we have to have some really frank discussions in January as far as the budget goes, what kind of dollars are going to be needed to sustain our businesses. We also know that even though it's not my jurisdiction, is housing. That's a huge issue. And it's still, although it's not my jurisdiction, it does affect workforce, which is my jurisdiction. So, you know, there's a big worry that, you know, we had issues prior to the flood. Now those issues are even larger than they were before. And so, you know, we need to talk about that, but we need to talk about, in budget terms, what kind of dollars can we move around to help our businesses, to help our housing issues. And, you know, one thing we don't have that we did 3 years ago was the federal government providing huge amounts of dollars to help everyone through COVID. So we're hoping, we really appreciate our federal delegation, all that they're doing to try to secure more funding for the state. And, you know, we look forward to seeing what happens in that realm. Just one small glimmer of good news, I think we heard yesterday from the Vermont Community Loan Fund, is the $15 million that my committee worked on and put out in legislation a couple of years ago. $15 million revolving loan fund that aids our career technical centers in providing on-the-job training for our students, both high school and adult learners, to rehab blighted properties or build new homes in their district. So that's live, and actually North Country Career Center in partnership with Newport City Development, Downtown Development Corporation partnered together. They received a $502,000 loan. They did purchase a property on the corner of Main and East Main, and they will start rehabbing that this fall for the students. So it's a win-win for everyone. It helps train our students, both, again, high school and adult learners in the trades, along with the land lab at North Country, bringing in landscapers to help landscape. This project will rehab a home and bring it back, a blighted property that will bring it back on usable again. But also there's a possibility of phase 2 and phase 3 where they may be able to construct a couple of new homes on that property as well. So it's really working out great for the Career Center here at North Country, as well as bringing some needed more housing to the area. So stay tuned to that. This is available to all 17 of our career centers. So hopefully they can be creative and find partnerships within their community or around their community in providing these experiences for our students. So I think with that, I think I've talked long enough. And if any questions, I'd be glad to answer if I can.
Thank you so much, Mike. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Representative Marcotte? There are a couple comments and reactions in the chat, so please make sure you take a look at those. I would like to ask Representative Williams, Representative Sims, and Representative Campbell if you'd like to say just a brief word or two, since we're very glad that you're with us this morning. Would any of you like to speak for a minute?
Sure, Jen, thanks. I would just, especially since the NECO folks are right here on the call, huge shout out to Northeast Kingdom Organizing and the Civic Standard and Hardwick for all the ways that they've sort of shown up as mutual aid organizations to kind of complement the municipal response to the flood. And I'm certainly walking away energized and inspired by how important our mutual aid efforts are, and look forward to thinking with others about how we help support that kind of on the ground capacity long term to be a part of the work we do, building strong communities that can be resilient in the face of climate change. And also hope that we can all use this as an opportunity to come together as a community to envision a more resilient future. And as we think about investment in infrastructure, looking forward to working with colleagues in the legislature about how we create access to resources that all communities, especially our smaller rural communities, can tap into the large dollars needed to invest in climate resilient infrastructure. So just some of the things that I'm taking away from the conversations I've had with folks on the ground, and would welcome opportunities to talk with others about those things as we head into the session. Thanks.
Thanks, Catherine. And we will be hearing more from NECO later in this convening. Representative Williams, Representative Campbell, would you like to say a few words?
Sure, this is Paul Campbell. Yeah, I guess I would just say that as Catherine pointed out, we really have to focus on rebuilding more resiliently, and I feel like that's going to be a huge challenge, going into the future. In my part of the state, St. Johnsbury, Concord, and Kirby, we didn't have too much in the way of impacts. We did have some flooding of farms and things like that, but not much in the way of road washouts or anything. We were very fortunate. It really shows how localized the impacts are, depending on how much rain you get. We only got 4 or 5 inches of rain, whereas other places got twice that. So I'm just struck by, I'm on the transportation committee this term, and I'm struck by how vulnerable all, especially the back roads are to getting washed out. They really all need to be ditched. We need to have better ditches around them to keep the water off the road and going someplace where it can be handled. And they need larger culverts. So there's a lot of work to do, and it's going to take years to harden our infrastructure. So anyway, this is a great opportunity to hear from all of you about what you're experiencing. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Scott. Terry, did you want to speak?
Sure. Up here in Essex, Caledonia, there hasn't been a lot of flood damage. There has been some. I did have a farmer over in Guildhall who lost some of his potato crop. I reached out to Anson Tibbetts, who is the Secretary of Agriculture, Food and Markets, and he was a tremendous help. I know that there was some road damage in East Haven and Burke, and I don't know who took the lead on that, but the response to get those roads back up and going was unbelievably successful. Anywhere I have been where there have been needs, it's getting taken care of. I hear nothing but wonderful things about the people who are taking the lead and getting people back on the roads, and we haven't had to deal with any housing issues as far as the floods go. The one thing I have been concerned about, and I apologize to Abby Long, I know that she is on here today. I expect there has been some damage to the trails. She's been very quiet and very resilient, and I'm sure she's got things under control, but if she has something she'd like to share, I would like to hear that. Other than that, everything's good over this way.
Okay. Thank you so much. We need to get on to Dave Upson, but I do know that Abby Long is here from Kingdom Trails. And so Abby, would you like to give a brief response to that?
Putting me on the spot, Terry. Yes, the trails were impacted. All trails actually across Vermont were impacted. We had trails that were completely underwater, culverts wash out, bridges disappear. And then, of course, the economic impact that, having to divert our trail crew who's building new trails, which is exciting and entices people to visit the area. All their efforts had to be dedicated to maintenance to getting those trails back up. But that's our job. That's what we did. And they were pretty incredible that they were able to shift and be flexible. And we're grateful to all our trail users who are understanding and abided by rules and trail ethics to not damage the natural resources and the landowners' properties that allow our trails to exist. So how was that for?
Thanks, Abby, for the impromptu update. Thank you. All right, shifting gears a little bit, a lot of the immediate response and recovery efforts were organized by the towns and by people within the towns, the neighbor to neighbor networks. And we wanted to make sure that that perspective was included today as well. So David Upson, who is the town manager in Hardwick, has kindly joined us today to share some of his thoughts and observations about the immediate response and recovery in Hardwick. So Dave, please.
All right. Well, thank you for this opportunity. So I've broken this up into two pieces: community projects and needs, and then the town, some of the town challenges. So from the very beginning, when we opened up the shelter the afternoon and night of the flood, I leaned on the nonprofits, the Civic Standard, and the neighbor to neighbor groups, which we had with the neighbor to neighbor group has a hotline right into our library. So we were able to put together volunteers from the beginning of this to staff the shelter, and then all the way through till the present day of cleanup. So right off the bat, after the flood, we began cleanup of debris, individual cleanup, home repair is ongoing, getting supplies donated, or finding the supplies and getting them to the people that need them. And then there was a period of time where we weren't sure if we would get individual assistance in Caledonia County. So we met with FEMA on the ground and brought them to 20 plus homes that were severely damaged. So once we got, that was probably a week to 10 days after the flood event. So there was kind of some nervousness there, whether or not we'd get that aid. So once that came in, we began the FEMA applications, and getting folks, getting the information out was important. And I think the town, partnering with the nonprofits, did a good job in getting as much information out to the public as we could through as many channels as we could. Emails, Front Porch Forum, website postings. So once the FEMA application process started, and then the programs, the state and federal programs, and that got released, we put together another batch of volunteers to help individuals get matched up with those programs, using the neighbor to neighbor hotline again, and then again getting information out in as many channels as we could. We had a lot of businesses affected. Our main motel in Hardwick was destroyed, and that was rebuilding and full quite a bit of the time in the summer. So the recreation economy with the trails and tourism was on the upswing. So that was a huge blow to the town. And then a lot of the farms lost their crops and were unable to get to their feed supplies for the summer cuts. So that is a concern of mine through the winter, is making sure that farmers are lined up with programs for funds to get feed into their livestock. And then with the individual and community needs, the winter months coming in with the heat, we had a lot of basements that were flooded. I've just really been pushing out the information to get to people signed up for getting contractors in their homes to pull their furnaces out or to test their furnaces to make sure they're not waiting till November or to see if they work. And on the town, there's a lot more community stuff, but I really wanted to emphasize the partnership with the nonprofits, the local nonprofits, and then the volunteering was amazing. There was one Saturday where we had 70 people volunteer for mucking and gutting of basements and cleaning debris from private homes. And then the town, this has been ongoing from the second day, hours after the flood. Roads, bridges, our municipal infrastructure, our wastewater plant suffered a pretty serious blow, and we're working with FEMA through the public assistance process on that. We're just trying to normalize and carry on with our normal program. So I think it's working well, and the information sharing from the beginning until now has been great, and I think we'll just continue to do that and address problems as they arise. My last big push is to get the river corridor cleaned up from the headwaters of the Lamoille and the Winooski rivers all the way down to Lake Champlain. I don't think that should be put on individual towns to have to do, and I'm pushing at the state level for a coordinated approach to the cleanup of the river corridor. And I'll end with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Comments, questions? For Dave. It's a quiet group this morning. I will, if I might, call on Ben Rose from Vermont Emergency Management, who just put something pretty important into the chat about adding Essex County to the, I think it's to the major disaster declaration status that Caledonia and Orleans County now have. Do I have that correct, Ben? Do you want to make a comment about that?
Well, thank you, Jen. Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So yeah, what I put in the chat is just for the public assistance, which is for road damage and other public infrastructure damage. So any of the towns in Essex County should have access, and the deadline for public assistance, request for public assistance, which is the request that starts eligibility for a town, are due by October 12th. So we have a 30-day extension for that. I had two other points I wanted to offer. One is that this week we're working on a similar extension for individual assistance. So we're going to ask FEMA for an additional 30 days for people who are sort of late in reporting to get their individual assistance started. Statistically, only a small trickle of the applications come in when FEMA grants an extension, but we're optimistic that we'll get that extra time for people who, for whatever reason, are slow to report. The other benefit of getting that 30-day extension for individual assistance applications is that we'll also extend the application deadline for Small Business Administration and for nonprofits and businesses. They're required to apply to SBA in order to get access to the FEMA public or individual assistance grants. And so the SBA is really kind of something that can be a stumbling block for people. And so we want to give people more time for that. And then the third thing I wanted to offer is in response to what Dave just said. And I wanted to let you know that we're sort of pivoting right now from the building debris, you know, the big piles in Montpelier and Barrier City and to a lesser extent in Coventry and Barton and other places. But so, you know, there's been 6,000 tons of debris coming out of flooded structures, and that has been the focus until now. But the debris team is pivoting to deal with the riverine debris, you know, the stuff that washed downriver and landed in fields at the peak of flooding, or in backyards or in trees. And we know that the upper Lamoille and the upper Winooski are a mess, and also the Black River down south, some other places. But the point is that the Department of Environmental Conservation is taking the lead in submitting a statewide application to another federal agency, not FEMA, but the Natural Resource Conservation Service Emergency Watershed Protection Program, and NRCS EWP, as we say in acronym land. And so that application is not going to do everything for everybody, but it's going to hopefully open the door for some coordinated approach, as Dave said, for how we can efficiently assist with the cleanup of the river debris. It's not quite as time urgent as the piles of wet carpet and stuff that's been out on the right of way, but we're going to need to deal with the mess along the rivers. And from a FEMA eligibility standpoint, towns have up to 6 months to do that type of debris cleanup. And with a simple request to the state has the authority to extend that by an additional 6 months. So it's not unusual, even when we have an ice storm or a routine flood, for the debris cleanup to go on into the following summer. You know, we may not see the last of the river debris cleanup until after the snow melts. You know, but we are working on developing a good plan for how to deal with those tough river deposit mess. Sorry, I've gone on a while, but that's what I got.
Thank
And
you,
thank
Ben.
you all. I'm so appreciative for all the work that went into getting Orleans County added to the declaration. I know we had to take FEMA back and show them more damages, and it was kind of a grind. But please, I hope everybody up there understands that we went for speed at the beginning by getting FEMA to declare 6 counties for individual assistance very quickly, just using aerial photography. And because the storm moved north and it was a little bit slower to show its damage up there, we had to do sort of the ground game to show FEMA enough damage to qualify Orleans County. But we got there, so.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate that. John Ramsey from the Center for an Agricultural Economy has put some important information in the chat. And before we move on to Dave Snedeker, I'm just going to ask John, did you want to take a minute to explain any of that?
Sure. Thank you. There's a couple of grant programs I put in the chat that's available to all farmers who have experienced damage and challenges due to the flood and rain. One is through the Vermont Community Foundation, and those applications are now open and being accepted. Another smaller grant program is something we're working with Farm Credit East on, and we're dispersing $250,000 with their support to farmers. Those are smaller grants, but they are grants. And then lastly, through our revolving loan fund, we do anticipate having emergency funds available through the fall, winter, and into the spring, even because, as David mentioned, the potential of ongoing feed shortages for some livestock farms that we're anticipating really until next cropping season. So feel free for folks to CAE and have them reach out if they're in need of support.
Thank you so much, John. Appreciate that. We'll move on now to David Snedeker of the Northeastern Vermont Development Association. And I should mention that Dave is a longtime member of the Collaborative Board. And I'd like to thank and acknowledge the other Collaborative Board members who were able to join us today. Peter Corey, Jody Freed, Julie LaForce, Abby Long, and Ed Sunday Winters. And I hope I caught you all. But the Collaboratives Board is endlessly supportive of the convening work that we do, and we're very grateful. So thank you all for being with us this morning. Dave, please take it away.
Thank you, Jen. And also I'd like to just offer a thanks to probably everybody on this call, because I'm guessing everybody played some role in this flood recovery initiative, whether it ranges from shoveling mud out of somebody's basement to disseminating information to individuals and businesses that may have been impacted. So thanks everybody for that. It does take a community. So my organization, NVDA, for those of you who don't know, we're both a regional planning commission, one of 11 in the state, and we're also a regional development corporation combined, and that's one of 12 in the state. So we have multiple roles in planning before emergencies and also responding during or after emergencies. So a lot of the preparation work we do is with municipalities. We have 50 in our region. And some of the things that we help towns with in any one year, every town is required to have a local emergency management plan. So Bruce Melindy from our staff is able to go out and help towns to put those plans in place. Those plans are actually very important in an emergency because they provide a lot of the local contact information in the event of an emergency, whether it's your select board members, your clerk, your fire departments, law enforcement, emergency responders, etc. So again, every town needs to have that in any one year. The other thing we help with is for towns that are interested in joining the National Flood Insurance Program. You're required to have flood hazard regulations at the local level. So we have planning staff that assist the communities that are interested in that particular program, which is important, obviously, in a flood event. We also help with hazard mitigation plans, which is a different grant or different program from the local emergency management plan, but it is more addressing planning to address the hazards in your community and identifying where those are and then what steps you can take to mitigate. And the last piece that we work with towns on, a lot of work in the roads. We do annually road erosion inventories with all of our towns, and we talk about ditching and culverts and things like that. And this is all important in the event of flooding. I think the work that happened after Tropical Storm Irene years ago, a lot of towns upsized culverts and made better improvements to the roads, which I think mitigated to some degree the damage that could have happened. So that's important. Those are all preparatory work that we do before events. The other role that we do as a regional organization, we have a local liaison role between state agencies like Vermont Emergency Management, the Agency of Transportation, and Agency of Natural Resources, and between those state agencies and then our towns. So a lot of what we do is collecting information for the state through Vermont Emergency Management and the State Emergency Operations Center. And then when we do have an event, we go directly to our towns. We have the contacts there, and we find out what damage may have occurred, and then we report back to the state. And then that's all compiled in a statewide inventory. So we also encourage in any event everybody to go ahead and apply or respond to Vermont 211, which is a good way to know what for the state to know where damage is around the state. And also that was important for businesses in this past round. So we were able to identify the businesses that had the most impacts as well as our towns. So I think a lot of our work is we do help in the event of a declared emergency. We help towns make sure that they know who to contact. They have to attend an applicant briefing, and then they make the request for public assistance. Sometimes we do preliminary damage assessments. That I think that was a step that was skipped this time because it was obvious that the damage was there statewide or most of the state. And but we are available to help towns with their public assistance request, and then we work with FEMA and sometimes taking them around and Vermont Emergency Management staff around to the communities where we know damage occurred. Switching over to the regional development side of our organization. So we work closely with the Small Business Development Center. I saw Heidi Krantz and Carrie Ann Scott were both online. And then Annie McLean from my staff was on. I think she may have to jump shortly. And but we try and get information on business resources in the event of a disaster out there, so people can begin thinking about recovery. I know a lot of was mentioned about the resources that were available early, primarily through the SBA, was in the form of loans. And I would agree that that's not exactly what the businesses want to hear. Many aren't in a position to take on debt, and but so anything that can be done to make loans grants is appreciated. There were a couple of grant funds, the Vermont Main Street Recovery Fund, which was not just for the businesses in the Montpelier Barre area, but also it's available statewide. And they were giving out $2,500 grants with a very simple application process just to get some cash flowing to the business. The other one was set up through the Agency of Commerce, which Representative Marcotte mentioned, and it was a $20 million program. It's called the Business Emergency Gap Assistance Program, and just noting the term gap, it's not supposed to cover the full scale of your losses. So, but it is intended to help recover some of those losses. We also know that more recently, Efficiency Vermont has opened up a program to assist businesses with equipment replacement. And I don't remember the total dollar amount off the top of my head, but I think it's an important program to help with that aspect of a recovery business, replacing equipment. And then there were a number of other opportunities through the Agency of Agriculture. They had some testing for, I think, soils for farms that may have been impacted. And then the Vermont Farm Fund had funds available. And then we also saw some grants through the Agency of Ag, and also grants available for the creative sector through the Vermont Arts Council. So I think I can stop there and maybe take any questions somebody may have.
Thanks, Dave. Any questions or comments? And again, thank you for those of you who are putting information in the chat. Caitlin Robinson from NCIC just added another potential grant opportunity, and we'll see if we can find some links to some of the things that Dave just mentioned. And Annie McLean's just mentioned that NVDA can work with businesses one-on-one to explore some of these opportunities. So any questions or comments before we move on to our final speaker? Okay. You've heard a lot. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, Jan, I was wondering if Dave does he have anyone that helps individuals that are having trouble filling out their application? Or does some of the other organizations have people on board that can help individuals fill out their applications?
Thanks, Representative Starr. I think our practice has been we work mostly with our municipalities for the public assistance requests. And on the business side, we do work directly with a business one-on-one, which I think Annie just mentioned in the chat. But as far as individual assistance through FEMA, that's not something that we get involved with.
Thank you.
Welcome, Senator Starr. I do believe that at some of the disaster recovery centers, there are folks who are helping individuals navigate the FEMA process. And Megan, you are our next speaker. Is that something that you can speak to, at least at the Barton Disaster Recovery Center?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can, it's coming up in the presentation. I'm happy to talk about it. And I see Penelope's hand is up, and I know that Neighbor to Neighbor Network in Hardwick also has some of this available. And I think Opie was trying to maybe jump in and talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Dave Upson is Opie, and then Penelope, if you could jump in before Megan starts her presentation.
So Wednesday evenings at the municipal building, 20 Church Street, we're offering a whole gamut of help with services, not only FEMA, but they do process the appeals and denials. But we're also, we have the USDA there on site. It's acting similar to a disaster recovery center. Those they pop up and then disappear. There was one in Danville, then there was one in Cabot. So rather than having a moving target, we have Wednesdays from 5 to 7 and Saturdays from 10 to noon. And I believe it's only for a few more. It might be, I'd have to check on the dates. You can reach out to the Neighbor to Neighbor group. But I think this is the last Saturday. There might be one more Saturday, one more Wednesday.
Thank you, Dave. Penelope.
Yes, hi, Jen and everyone. The Barton DRC Disaster Recovery Center is open Monday through Saturdays from 8 to 6. It is staffed with, at all times, at least 2 FEMA representatives and a really great SBA representative. There is also, at different times, someone from the Department of Labor, someone from USDA RD and another USDA program, someone from the Department of Health. I'm really impressed with the FEMA staff there in the way that they have been retaining the information for all the various partners, including Megan, and giving that out to various people who are coming in perhaps at a time where one of those persons aren't there. I also want to give kudos to my recovery chief, Ben, who, recognizing that the Barton DRC is a smaller one than a usual DRC, has deployed me to be there as often as possible and do my regular work from there so that we can help to connect dots that don't fall into the federal lane, because that was a gap that we had there. So the Barton DRC is there, it is strong, and we recommend that anybody that's having challenges come by. The people there really care, and they're impressed with what NECO has done and everyone else in the Northeast Kingdom with relatively to other more dense populations in the state do a heavy lift for the citizens. So just wanted to put that out there as available resources.
Thanks, Penelope. Any other questions or comments before we move on to Megan? Okay. As I'm introducing Megan, who is the lead organizer for Northeast Kingdom Organizing, I'm going to add to what so many others have said on the call today about the amazing work that NECO and the Civic Standard and other neighbor-to-neighbor networks have done since the very day of the floods. They've been in people's homes. They've been providing individual assistance. They've been organizing resources. They've just been a tremendous force on the ground and a compassionate force on the ground for people who really needed their assistance. And so delighted to have Megan speaking today on their behalf.
Thanks so much, Jen. Thanks for inviting me to do this. And I'm wondering, do I have the opportunity to share my screen?
Thor, can you fix that? There you go.
How's that? Can you all see
Good.
this?
Good.
Okay. All right, I'm going to start from the beginning. So my name's Megan. I'm with Northeast Kingdom Organizing, or NECO. And I wanted to give an update on where we're at right now in terms of helping people get into a better situation post-flood. We have stabilized 41 homes in Orleans and Caledonia County, and some of the towns that we've worked in are Craftsbury, Hardwick, Orleans, Barton, Coventry, Lowell, Greensboro, Irisburg, and Glover. So we're really kind of spread out, working with a lot of different towns and villages and different municipalities to get people in a better place. And of those 41 homes, we've done 25 muck outs, and those pictures are at the top of the screen. That's like wet stuff out of a basement, dirt, oil, you name it. Anything wet is coming out. And then we've also done 27 guts, and those pictures are kind of at the bottom of the screen. And those are usually a 4-foot drywall gut, 4 foot and below. And then after that, we usually dry out with dehumidifiers. So we get people below 17% humidity in their studs and floors if we can. And then we do a mold remediation, and we've done 13 mold remediations so far. And we have many more of those to go. We hope to do 4 to 5 more homes this week in Burke, Glover, Barton, Derby, and Morgan. And we have, I think in all, 10 more homes to go total for Orleans County, I'm hoping. And we hope to be done with this phase of recovery by September 30th. We also have opened a couple of supply and drop-in sites in Orleans and Barton. And in those sites, there's PPE, shovels, rakes, generators, dehumidifiers, power washers, hoses, you name it, like hand sanitizer, diapers. But there's also just a friendly face, so people can kind of come in. We used to be open sites, and as volunteer interest in this, we're struggling to hold on to volunteers to staff these and keep these open as much as we did initially, which is a common theme. And we're moving more and more volunteers that are able to the muck and guts, so we really can finish that phase of this recovery work. So we still have supply sites in Orleans and Barton. They're open 3 days a week. We have food support that we've partnered with the Barton Senior Meal Site to offer a community meal, and some food vouchers that have come through CAE, and Allie Howell has been like an incredible force of nature making that all happen, as well as like all the other volunteers that you see pictured here. And I just wanted to put pictures out because I wanted people to just see like the immense amount of community support that it takes to do this recovery, and how critical every single volunteer and partnership is. And these are some of the people behind this recovery work. Bobby, to answer your question, we're also helping with FEMA and SBA. Penelope has been an incredible resource in this way and has been at the DRC in Barton almost every day, really helping people, conveying information to us so that we can put people on our muck and gut list, or help get somebody water that needs it, and just help us do wellness checks and make sure everybody's being contacted and cared for. We have some scheduled FEMA and SBA supports coming up this week, and we're doing some press releases related to that, but we'll be at the DRC in Barton Monday, Wednesday, and Friday until September 12th. So September 11th, the Monday, will be our last day. And we'll be there from 3 to 6 p.m. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the next couple of weeks. I wanted to talk a little bit about why we were in the position to do this. And a lot of people have talked about neighbor to neighbor networks and like grassroots organizing. We are not a flood recovery organization. We never intended to be a flood recovery organization. Like the only thing we knew how to do was knock on people's doors and see if they were doing all right. And so the Tuesday that the flood, like the morning after the flood, so Tuesday morning, that's what we started doing. Just calling everybody that we had already talked to. And as part of the Working Communities Challenge Grant, we had already been in all of these communities for months. And so we had 32 canvassing days and community events. And we had also actually organized 2 months before the flood, we started organizing a mutual aid disaster relief network on a Signal thread. And we had meetings in Hardwick and in Greensboro. And so we had a group of people on an app that were able to mobilize really quickly, who had already been thinking about disaster relief and how to do community outreach, and had conversations and training around that. So we just did the thing that we knew how to do, which was talk to people. And we had talked to in Barton and Orleans before the flood about 400 people, so like 25% of the population. And what that allowed us to do was a couple of things. One was respond really, really quickly to flood recovery efforts and getting people like water and the things that they needed right away and building those relationships. But it also helped us, like when we didn't get when Orleans didn't get the FEMA declaration, we were able to go out with Penelope from Vermont Emergency Management and Catherine Sims to go door to door to some of the places we knew had been impacted and make sure that FEMA saw them so that we could get this declaration, which is really pivotal for our county. This is a picture of Bernie Dobb in his trailer. I took this like a week probably after the flood. I love this picture. It's also just like a kind of a sad, this is one of the hardest places that I have personally been. And people are very much not out of the woods. And this trailer is completely uninhabitable. And there's not really a solution for this family in terms of where they're going to go for the winter. Where they're going to live. And I think we all know that the things that people were already struggling before the flood, and the people who can afford to live in a flood zone are generally there because it's cheaper land. And so you've got people who are experiencing a lot of other forms of structural injustice who then now have a flooded home. And people who are already hard up got really hard hit by this particular disaster. But I wanted to also talk about some opportunities, and this is that same person. So this is Bernie after we mucked out what we could from the mobile home where this family lives. And he's holding a picture of when he was the baseball coach for the town. And his son was in this picture, and this is kind of came out of the flood debris, and we're all standing around drinking beer and talking after this. And actually Bernie this night came with me to the Barton trustees meeting to tell the town what he was going through and just like do some advocacy, just like talk about his story. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity to build these relationships, to build trust, to include people in in civic engagement, and to bring dignity to people. We can rebuild hopefully back better if we keep a foundation around relationship and not othering people at the forefront of the work. And so I wanted to just do that side by side. Like this is possible. This is what's going on too in this work. There's a lot of stories and relationships being formed. Another thing that has worked really well that I see as an opportunity is we've been able to partner with Glover EMS moving forward. And I think they are helping us do a lot of the visual assessments, so we don't have to do every aspect of the recovery work. Like we've felt, because we're working in so many different towns, it's felt like we've taken on a lot. And each town has a different level of capacity. So to cover the entire county has exposed a lot of different challenges. But this partnership has worked really well, and I think we can continue to maintain great, strong partnerships and be better prepared in the future. I'm going to skip this because I'm talking a lot. Challenges. I think so. Trash, the trash issue. I can't tell you how much trash I've had to manage with different towns and villages throughout the county. And it has exposed a lot of, I think there's a lot of challenges with like our municipal governments, many of whom are primarily run by volunteers. There's just like a lack of capacity. There's a lack of capacity within NEK-Wide. There's a lack of capacity in the towns, I think, to like handle some of the infrastructure. And so I just wanted to name that. We need to rebuild. It's going to be a massive project. You know, I think people are maybe hoping that what we did for the muck and guts we'll be able to also do for construction. And I don't think that's true. I do not think NECO can handle this alone. Just the amount of money and materials and people it will take to get people in a better place are just so much beyond what we'll be able to organize by ourselves. And I think also one of the challenges is there's maybe sometimes a feeling that we've encountered like this didn't impact us or this doesn't happen here. And I wanted to just name that because I think it relates both to this flood, but it might also relate to some of the underlying conditions that need to be uncovered the way disaster uncovers these things. And primarily one of those is substance use. I wanted to put that out there. So like I said, we're not going to be able to do this alone, especially not in Orleans, not in like Orleans County. And I think one of the things that I would really love to see us do is form a long-term recovery group. And this is something that happens after a disaster. FEMA helps organize these things, but they're really a community-led response. And we have an invitation to create one, and there's already been a meeting, but that doesn't mean that there's an invitation to still join. And in order to, so I'll just say that a long-term recovery group allows us to organize people, materials, and money across many counties. So like a small village that doesn't have the volunteer capacity or staff capacity to manage recovery in their village or town could become part of this group and also not feel alone. Nonprofits could share resources. Money can get distributed more equitably. We can have a big picture view of what recovery looks like. And it's a really wonderful opportunity, I think, that will help us serve the people, the homes, the families, and the businesses in our region. So by next Friday, if you're interested in joining this, we're going to send out a long-term recovery group interest form, and it's a PDF. It'll come out by email. And there'll also be a recording of the first meeting that we had, which was an informational meeting about what a long-term recovery group is and how it functions. And then we're going to have a second meeting next Tuesday, the same time, Tuesday from 10 to 11:30 a.m. And we're going to make a decision about whether or not to be a tri-county recovery group or a quad county. So tri-county would be the kingdoms, 3 counties, and a quad county would be the kingdom plus Lamoille. And I'll lastly just say that we have had a ton of interest from nonprofits and people doing social services and human resources, but we're really looking to build a diverse group and are seeking representatives from businesses and financial sectors. And that's it for me. Thanks for letting me take up all this time talking about our work.
Thank you so much, Megan, for all of that information and for the call to further action at the end. Who has comments or questions for Megan?
All right, somebody has to comment. I see there's a couple in the chat, but I just want to say, wow. Just amazing what Megan and her group are doing. And I just want to say accolades to you and your folks and all that you're doing out there in the community. So thanks for sharing.
Thanks, Peter. Any other comments, questions? There's been a lot of information shared today. Does anyone have any other resources that they would like to share or add to the chat? Dave?
I just want to say that a lot of we just need to remember that a lot of the community members that were affected by this flood, at least in our community in Hardwick, had some struggles to begin with, and I want to make sure that we are doing what we can to make them even more whole, financially, community-based, supported as we can. And this is our opportunity to do that with the programs that are in place. And we need to really capitalize on that stuff.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dave. Jody.
Oh, can you guys see and hear me okay?
Yes.
So I just wanted to, one, thank everybody for all the amazing efforts throughout the region. Really incredible and heartfelt thank you to everybody. Also just wanted to bring up the indirect impacts that I think are going to be felt for quite a while, and that we need to take into consideration as we think about both the immediate economic response, but also the longer term resiliency. And those are around convening and specifically around tourism and the impacts that have been happening there. Also in the creative sector, there's been tremendous impact in terms of the weather instability, saturated fields, cancellation of events. Those things have trickle down effects because all of those are generating economic activity in our communities that feed the restaurants, feed the gas stations, and pay employees. So I think we need to really pay attention to that piece of it and include that in this conversation. The Agency of Commerce and the Department of Tourism, the creative sector right now are doing an economic impact survey across both sectors so that we'll have some actual data to be able to see what those impacts have been over the course of the summer. But again, for everybody on this call, as we think about the moving forward, the response, and also the longer term resiliency piece, we need to make sure we think about those because those will have ripples that go long after the actual event itself. Thank you. And again, thank you to everyone for all of your efforts.
Thank you, Jody. Penelope.
Hi, Jen. Thanks. I just wanted to follow up what Megan was saying about any interest in the long-term recovery group. I've been fortunate enough to hear the model, and I listened in on that first meeting. And one of the things that strikes me is its ability to gain strength in numbers for individual case management, so that we can, or the group can, look at all of the needs of something that has come to light, as Jody was just talking about. So it's a really strong model by way of efficiently organizing the work. So if you have any interest in that multifaceted long-term recovery, this could be something of real interest. Thank you so much.
Sorry, somehow muted myself. Thank you, Penelope, for that. And I put my email in the chat if you're interested in participating in the long-term recovery group. As Megan said, NECO and the collaborative and FEMA convened an initial meeting of that group, and the next one will be on September 5th. And we are looking to make sure that we have as broad a representation of the kingdom as possible at the table before some important decisions about structure and future are made. We will also send the interest form to anyone who registered for this convening, and please help spread the word. We're very interested in gathering people together to look at what long-term recovery will look like. There's also a link to through the ACCD Storm Recovery and Economic Injury Survey in the chat, and there will be some action points and a report coming from this convening as well, with all of the rich conversation and information that we've shared today. So please watch for all of those things. Catherine Sims has her hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. It's been great to be here listening about all of the kind of updates about what's been happening and what's next, and really glad to hear about the long-term recovery group for folks to, coordinate resources and continue to support the needs of our communities. I guess I'm curious whether anyone is sort of holding space for reflection and kind of developing the lessons learned and best practices. I think we all know that this extreme weather event was not, a one-time thing. It's something that we're all going to continue to experience in different ways more and more in the coming years. And so seems like, we have an opportunity here to reflect on the response and recovery and, build, muscles so that we can be more flexible and responsive next time. So I guess I'm curious whether the collaborative or that long-term recovery group or anybody else is creating space for all the partners to come together and say, what worked, what can we do better next time?
I would say that'll be a vital piece of what comes out of this and any subsequent convenings as far as the collaborative is concerned. And Megan, I don't know if you want to speak to this, but that's certainly been one of the topics of conversation in the very nascent long-term recovery group planning. So completely agree that lessons for the future and building back in smarter and more resilient ways absolutely needs to be a facet of all of this. And I think we've heard a lot of that today. I think we've heard a lot of where some gaps perhaps were identified and some things that that will need to be looked at and adjusted going forward. Megan, did you want to comment at all on that as far as the long-term recovery group is concerned? And then Tin will come to you.
Yeah, I think that, Catherine, there's like this intersection between the WCC work and then the long-term recovery group, and then what NECO is doing, where we're planning on convening the community to have these conversations, I think in Coventry, Glover, and Barton right now. And that's like a what worked, what didn't work with people who were impacted by the flood. So that piece, NECO is committed to doing and scheduling. And then I think there's a question about how what's the role of people who are impacted in these conversations about what systems need to change and what we can do better. And I don't know if that piece is fully resolved.
Thank you. Tin?
Yeah, along those same lines, I was also hoping to add to the list of reflections, what is municipal capacity for emergency response and recovery, and how do we cultivate that and develop that in the kingdom? Because I live in Barton. I was flooded, and and everyone did the best they could, but the response here looked very different than it did in communities that are larger and have resources and have staff, at the municipal level. I just worry, I'm thinking about the future and what does that look like if we have, continue to have major events, and who is helping support those municipal leaders to, as we look forward in terms of future emergency response recovery. There's discussions of buyouts happening in different places. Who's helping facilitate conversations about if you have multiple buildings bought out and destroyed and turned to green space, what does that look like? What's the impact to your communities? And so I just want to make sure that we're involving those municipal leaders and really talking about how we build capacity so we can do this better next time.
Absolutely a priority, Tin. Thank you. Other comments, questions, anything that anyone would like to add? As I said, there will be a report with some action steps and next steps. This will be the first of many conversations. And please look for information both from the collaborative and about the long-term recovery group. As Megan said, there's some intersections between a few of our organizations and the Working Communities Challenge. And so we'll be sorting out how all of those things are related down the road. Megan?
I just wanted to say yes to Tin out loud. And I think that, even like even Barton, I feel like had, I mean, a more organized response than other municipalities. And I think this is a real thing. And I think having the opportunity to work with all of these different people, Tin, I think you've said it best, and work with all these different towns and villages. I really had a chance to see how different it is, depending upon which community and what capacity they have. And it's like, it's wild, and it makes complete sense that so many people in the kingdom didn't apply for ARPA funding that was available, because there's just not the capacity to hold some of these things. So what does it look like to support these, to support a variety of communities moving forward? And that's it from me.
Thanks, Megan. Bobby Starr, are you still with us? You came in a little bit late. So the four representatives who were able to join us today all had a chance to say a few words, and I want to extend the same invitation to you, Bobby, if you're still with us.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. Yeah, I've enjoyed the last hour, practically hour. I did have trouble with my passcode number, getting that in. But, you know, I think, you know, our agencies have been working very well, working together. Doug Farnham, I've had a lot of conversations with him at the state level, and have worked with him for years in Montpelier, and I know he's a great guy. And of course I missed part of the meeting, so I don't know if any of that was discussed, but certainly if anyone does have a problem, I know Doug's phone is, you know, he'll answer it if you call. And the administration has been, I think, very responsive to our serious problems. And I did listen to Megan, and I do think that, you know, numbers are good for strength, and if we could get Lamoille County in with our three, a quad group of us could make, you know, it would make a big difference, I think, when we go after something in Montpelier. It's all about strength in numbers, and the only way the kingdom has strength is if we all act together. One issue I brought up at the Barton meeting a week or so ago with the state people was that, you know, if we keep doing the same old and following the same old map, we're going to get the same old results the next time we get flooded. And what I'm referring to is the idea of letting the rivers fill up with silt from up above and floats downstream, and any river you drive by in the low times, you see these big sand and gravel bars in the middle of the river. And you know, if they weren't there, it would just seem logical to me that some of the river water would stay in the river. But no one seems to ever want to talk about dredging some of these high spots out of our rivers and reusing that resource for town roads and things of that nature. So I think there's a lot of work ahead of us, and certainly if anybody needs any assistance and I can help with, you know, feel free to call me. And thank you, Jen, for holding this meeting this morning.
Thank you, Senator Starr. We are coming up on 11:30, which is our closing time, so I think we will wrap this up. As I said, this is the first conversation of many as we continue through this process. And I just want to add my deepest thanks to everyone who has been working so hard in the affected communities in the Kingdom and in Montpelier and in Washington and elsewhere. And thank you very much, and look forward to continuing this process, this convening process, and to identifying priorities for the future. Thank you all so much.